Hello lovers, in today's video we are going to be discussing how your soulmate journey can be a little bit impeded by your ego's fear of death of one of your identities. I'm Jodi with Enlighten Ya, and thank you so much for being here. So what does the ego have to do with your soulmate journey or your journey in order to find high quality love? Well, the ego has everything to do with everything because the ego is your mind. And I did a video on my friend Britta Albert's channel and I explained what I believe that the ego is, and I'm going to put a link to that video here as well as a link to her video where she explains what she believes the ego is, and together we kind of fill in the gaps on what the ego could possibly be. But I will tell you that the ego is your mind. The ego is that thing when you can't get out of your mind and it's you're ruminating over and over and over again about a problem. That is your ego trying to help you through something. That's the way it sees it. The ego sees itself as helping you make the best decisions in your life to keep you safe. It doesn't always keep you safe is the problem, or maybe it does. Maybe it always keeps you incredibly safe, and that means that you're kept in a cocoon and in a shell, and you're never really able to fully experience the things in life that you want to experience because you're too busy being safe. It's like never being able to go on that beautiful vacation because you're afraid that you might drown, and so you're not going to go on a cruise, or you're not going to go to the beach, or you're not going to do these things. You'll never go snorkeling, you'll never swim in the ocean because you're afraid that you're going to drown. That's kind of what the ego is, and it does these things to you. So I watched a really interesting video this week, and it talked about the 3 different types of love that we have in our life. And everybody really has about 3 major loves in their life. The first one being where you're pretty young, 20 and under, and you fall in love with someone and it feels very real, and it's not something that you think you'll ever want to let go, but it's very immature love. And of course, eventually you grow out of that and you have to move on. The next one is your more mature love, and that is the one where it starts off great in the beginning and you have this beautiful relationship and it feels great. You probably get married, maybe you have some children, and then something happens, and it's not that it's wrong, but it's not necessarily that it's right. And it's not that you've had bad experiences. You've had a great life with this person possibly, but now things are different and you guys have fallen apart. And the one thing that you know about this relationship is it reminds you a lot of your parents. Okay, so it reminds you a lot of the parental relationship that you had in one way or another in your life. And the thing that wasn't in this video was this part of it. So when we choose a mate that we want to have for the rest of our lives, we don't always do that from the most mature place. We do it from a place of familiarity. So if we had, growing up, a very overbearing father, a very controlling father, then we may choose a husband that is overbearing and controlling. And we don't do that on purpose. And they may not be that person's main traits, but it is something that we are energetically drawn to because it's what's familiar to us. If we had a mother who is also the same controlling and overbearing and always wanting to be in our business, or suffered from a lot of like mental problems, then we'll probably end up with a wife that has these same sort of issues. Now, what happens when we are in these relationships is that we love these people regardless, and we know that they're a lot like our parents, and we know that these relationships are real, but eventually, when you come into your own self, you start realizing that this isn't healthy for you any longer, and you move out of it. And that would bring us into the 3rd phase of love, which is the truest love of your life. These are the people that are creators. They are the soulmates that we talk about, all of that. And you can move into that love, but you can only get there if you find your true authentic self. And that is what we are trying to do on this channel. Now, does that mean that you can only have 3 main loves, meaning you're young, you're 20 and under love, the person most likely that you're to marry the first time? And I hope this doesn't trigger anyone and says, well, I don't know, I love my husband, I'm going to stay married to him forever. Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. That's fantastic. He may be your absolute soulmate and you guys can live a happy life forever and ever. So please don't let this trigger you. And then you have your soulmate love, that end love, the end love that you take to the end of your life because it feels so good. What stops you from going from one marriage into the exact same type of marriage? There's nothing that stops that except personal growth. Because what ends up happening a lot of times is that people are not searching for that high quality of love. They just want companionship. So they come out of one marriage where it wasn't necessarily healthy or productive or a very good marriage, or maybe it was at some point, but then it grows dysfunctional and they leave that marriage or something happens and they end up not together any longer. Then they go into another relationship and somehow they end up in the exact same kind of relationship that they were in when they were married. And this feels very, very comfortable to them. They just know that this is a comfortable place for them to be. They can handle the stresses of it. And the love feels really, really strong enough and it's good. But what really is happening is the ego is very happy that you've chosen something that you're very familiar with. The ego loves that there's no change here, okay? It absolutely wants you to try and stay on the same path because there's nothing that you don't already know. And it's hard for you to get hurt when you've already gone through a process and you've already been there and you've lived through it. So in order for you to move up into a new soulmate type love, you have to let go of all of the abuse and bad things that have happened in your previous marriage. And maybe there was no abuse. There may have been nothing like that. And maybe when you were married to the person before, you chose all the good characteristics of your family, all the best things, and that's what you loved about your spouse, but it ended nonetheless, and now you need to move on. If you want to move into something that's from mediocre into something that's truly phenomenal, you have to be willing to recognize who you are, the basis of everything that you want out of life. You have to not find a mate because they will take care of you, because they offer you a financial life or some kind of things and stuff that you enjoy, because the things and the stuff only last for so long. If you really want that deep, satisfying love, the one that this video talks about as the ending of the most beautiful love that you can have, you have to push all that aside and look for the essence of a person. It's not in their looks, and it's not in their bank account, and it's not in all of the things that we normally judge people on. It is based on how they make you feel and how you feel when you're with them, how well you feel that they know you, appreciate you, how much that is reciprocated for both sides. Both of you will lovingly reciprocate and want to be with each other. And it's really something that's worth fighting for. But what ends up happening, and I see this a lot in my clients and in my friends, is we end up in the same pattern of relationship over and over and over again. Those that were married to narcissistic men will continually marry narcissistic men. They just do it over and over. Or how about the relationships that break up and get back together and break up and get back together and break up and get back together, like 5 or 6 times they keep trying to get back together? What is happening there is that they're going back to what they know that is familiar to them, and their ego can't stand the idea that they are trying to move beyond what they know is their normal identity. See, we have many identities that we live with. We have the identity of being, I have the identity of being a mother and a sister and an aunt and a mother to stepchildren and a grandmother to stepchildren, and also all of these different personas. I have a work persona, I have a design persona and a coaching persona, and all of these identities. Well, you also have your lover identity. And when you want to transform into a new place, to a higher level, then the old parts of my lover identity, if I'm moving up into a greater relationship, okay, and my lover identity now needs to upgrade, it feels to the ego like I want that to die. And it just sees it as a death. And it looks at it so harshly. And it feels and it will do anything it can to keep me in my place, because that is where I'm safe. That is what I know. That is what's comfortable for my mind and the ego inside of me. But I choose to go further than that. I want to be more than that. I want to have more in my life. Therefore, I'm asking this identity of lover to not die, but to transform with me. So how do I get the ego to calm down and stop trying to fight me to staying the same when I know that I need to transform and change? And that is by having conversations with all of the triggers that come up in me while I'm trying to do this change. So let's take you as an example, okay? I'm going to use some of my clients that I've dealt with in the past and what they've experienced while they're trying to go through this change, okay? One of my clients was constantly in relationships with only narcissistic men. And when she was offered the opportunity at work, she met a man whom she liked very, very much. He didn't look anything like she thought that the guy that she would fall in love with would look like. He didn't have the same kind of bank account. He didn't have the same kind of body. He wasn't as tall. But she just felt a really strong resonance with this person. Like, she said that he just made her feel comfortable right away. And together the two of them really hit it off. He had a great personality with her. In fact, his personality he would describe as awkward to anybody else, but with her he was just like magnetically alive, and it felt so good to be with her. The two of them, even he said that she wasn't necessarily what he would find normally attractive in a woman, because she didn't fit all of the bill that he normally tried to follow. But when he came together with her, he said, I had never seen anyone more beautiful in my life. And she felt the same way about him. These two people who never would have come together at a younger age were recovering both in themselves of all of the things that they thought they wanted in their life. And they allowed themselves to be completely open to the possibility that what they thought that they wanted wasn't. And they asked the triggers. So the triggers came up all the time. And she would have her friends say, what, you're dating him? That's not at all like the guy that you would ever date. And she would say, I know. And she would start to pull away and say, maybe this isn't right for me. Maybe this guy's not right for me. This is not what I always said that I wanted. It's not on my list. This isn't all the things that I wanted in a relationship. And I coached her through it, and we talked about it, and I said, tell yourself that it's okay to love this person because he's good for you and you are good for him, and together you guys are a very, very beautiful couple. So it's training your ego to work with you. Tell your ego that your identity is not trying to die. I don't want to kill this identity. I only want to transform it into something greater. When you speak to yourself out loud or to yourself in your head, it doesn't matter, but that is how you make the ego transition with you. You notice the triggers and you work through them like you would any other relationship in your life. Is the ego separate from you? Well, a lot of people would tell you that it is, because a lot of highly enlightened people say that they have experienced complete ego death, that they no longer go by anything that's in their head. Their mind is only there for practical tasks, and they're not ruminating on anything that's ever happened over and over and over again. They are clearly only in the present moment and only using their intuition on everything around them. Most of us have a hard time doing that. So in the process of getting to the point where possibly one day you can experience true ego death, where you only live presently in the moment, in the happiest, most contentment place that you can be, until you get there, you need to work with the ego and let it know what is good for you. And sometimes that means stepping back a little bit and letting it catch up. And what I mean by that is sometimes you slip up. Sometimes you fall back into old patterns. You're going to step back, and it's the ego fighting really hard. Let it fight. Let it fight and slip back. And it's okay if you slip back a little bit and wait it out. It's just like sleeping on it for a few nights and then go right back in, because the transformation that you're on is the best thing for you. And don't let the ego tell you anything else. The ego fears death of an identity, but the identity is not dying. The identity is transforming into something greater. Think of it that way. And I hope this message wasn't too hard to understand. Thank you guys. I'm Jodi with Enlighten Ya. Contact me if you need any help, and I love you guys. Have a great day. Bye.